What happened at work that made everyone quit at once?
Worked in a call center offering free public transport brochures to people living in a city. The place was poorly managed. It was contracted out by the local government and only cared about numbers. Early during one shift, a spate of bombings on public transport killed a load of people around the city. After a few calls of getting abuse from people aghast, we were trying to get their details to send them bus, train timetables, etc. We collectively stopped making calls. We assumed management would pause the project for that week at least. Maybe longer. Out of respect for what had happened, our manager put her foot down and told us we must continue calling that morning. And as we were only on temporary contracts, anyone who refused may face being replaced. Then she stormed off. The entire team quit on the spot. We just got up and left without speaking to her again. We called up the work agency to let them know, and they did not blame us. We were all replaced, but the local government office heard what had happened and pulled the plug on the contract with that call center within a month. Smallish company with a very necessary programming team of 5 people. CEO spent several $100,000 repainting and refurbishing the building, deciding he didn't like the color, and got it redone in the same month. Then lockdown hit and the company was suddenly struggling for money. CEO decided to retrench 2 of our team members. At first we thought that he picked those 2 because they were less familiar with the systems. But then the other 3 of us were told by the CEO that those 2 were in the most rough positions financially, and one was expecting another kid in a few weeks, and that this meant that they could hire them back as contractors for cheap because they'd be desperate. In the next week, the 3 of us chatted among ourselves. All resigned, and they had to keep the other 2 devs on with their standard paycheck for longer, all while looking for new places to work. I worked at a bakery a while back, and while enjoyable at times, it was generally a nightmare. There was one highlight though, and that was our second manager. We had 3 managers and the first and third were okay, but they never really motivated people and at times could be very rude. Our second manager, however, was amazing. She was always encouraging, kind, understanding, and I never heard her get angry. She was the type of person who was meant to be a leader. And she did her job well. Too well. Corporate decided to transfer her to another location since that one was failing. And pretty much everyone quit the moment we found out she was leaving. She was the glue that held us together, and I still remember her as one of the best bosses I've ever had. When the managers said they could train monkeys to do the job, so all the staff retired, and they had to halt operations until they hired 2 staff to be on call all the time. Guess how long that lasted? Worked at a chain pizza place. The manager didn't approve of how well we cleaned and prepped for the next day. So we all came into a note saying something to the effect of, "You are all replaceable," so we all said okay, took off the uniform and left. We didn't even lock up or close up shop. Just walked off. Phones were ringing for orders. There were people coming into the dining area, but nobody was there working. Once she realized nobody was there, she was calling everyone going nuts, telling us to come to work or we're fired. One person went back and tried to save it. I just reminded her that I was replaceable, and so was the person who signed my check. Then hung up. They had to close for about a week or 2 to replace the staff. The location completely closed and filed bankruptcy less than a year later, at least partly due to her leadership. The location is a Verizon store now.
Worked at Dairy Queen. Someone was stealing money regularly during the closing shift. Many of us had a suspicion of who it was, and I'm pretty sure most of us told our manager for fear of being blamed ourselves. We were certain it was the assistant manager who was with us on those closing shifts. Instead, our manager started randomly firing younger staff members for any minor discretion and blaming the missing money on them. When they fired me, it was the last straw and several of my co-workers walked out in solidarity. Newsflash, it was the assistant manager all along. I ended up threatening to go to the labor board and they kind of paid me off.
COVID hit the FedEx supply chain, broke the entire system and exposed bad management. The pressure fell on top of the drivers. We quit one after another. We didn't all quit at once, but within a week or two of the event. It was an optometrist's office, and I was one of just 4 employees. The doctor invited another practice to move in and share space with us in our already cramped-in, disorganized office. We had to do all the work to make room for them. The doctor never broke from her usual routine to help us with the transition, or stayed late as we all did. Then the new doctor arrived, having let all of his staff go, assuming that we would work for him, without being paid by him. The practices weren't merging in any way. He hired only one person, who was barely out of high school, who had no idea what they were doing. Guess who had to train them? And the doctor never reduced the amount of appointments we took. We had our usual heavy workload all along. Our patients shared a waiting room with theirs. They were not prompt in taking their patients back, but we were. Their patients threw us dirty looks, and sometimes yelled at us for ignoring them. But we were forbidden from saying anything to them about why we ever helped only half the people who came in the door, or why we couldn't answer their questions and had to redirect them to the least knowledgeable person in the room, the other doctor's one employee. The doctor refused point blank to listen to any of our concerns. We all quit, and the practice sold out to one of the eyeglass chains a few months later. Worked at a cheap clothing retail store while I was in college. 15 to 20 hours per week for the first several months, as was most of the staff. Then we got a new manager who decided that the state mandated paid breaks, 15 minutes after 4 hours, were a waste of money. So he changed everyone's shifts to 3 hours 45 minutes or less so no one would get a paid break. Then people complained. So he hired a bunch of new people and reduced the old staff to about 1 shift a week. Lost pretty much everyone who actually knew what they were doing in less than a month. I heard most of the new people also quit pretty quickly, once they figured out how dumbly the place was run. Poor pay for laborious work, passing highly qualified people up for promotions and giving that spot to someone with no experience or training in the field to someone from outside connected personally and someone in management. I happened over about a month. Me leaving was the breaking point for most people. I was the one maintenance guy that would actually answer calls and get things done. I left after getting turned down for an R&D position, which I did at my previous job in more technical field. Within a week 2 warehouse guys left, along with 3 production people, which was half of that department. Then shortly after that even the HR girl left along with the maintenance manager. It's not a big company, but a very popular one in the RVing and towing products trade. Too bad the owners only care about profit and not employees being able to afford housing. Manager kept pitching Amway to us on breaks and then cut hours of those that didn't sign up under him. We worked in retail at the mall. At a salon, the owner kept stealing money from the till to buy crack. One day he fired a beloved employee for calling him out and we all walked out at the same time, in solidarity. The guy everyone hated became the manager because the lousy CEO played favorites. Business largely worked because the owner trusted his employees to do a good job. So the employees did a good job. The business was doing really well and the owner assumed it was all because of him, so he started micromanaging everyone's job. People started dropping off like flies because the working conditions became intolerable. The company didn't last very long after that. There was a staff of 10. At the beginning of last year it was agreed if more than 50% were out sick with COVID we closed the place down for 1 week and then reassess. 9 of us were out with COVID at the same time, including the boss. He threatened to fire the last person if they didn't go in and cover for 9 people including the boss. We all quit within the next month like hell. Did any of us want to be in that position, especially when the plan we co-constructed wasn't honored? Fuck profits over people. Manager got caught stealing from employees. I worked at 7 to 11 for 2 years. We are the busiest gas station in the area because we were the first one off of the highway and a block from the hockey arena. When I started, the task list we had was manageable. If things were really busy, we'd miss a couple, but the next shift was able to pick it up. By the time I quit, we were lucky to finish 1/3 of the list. The area manager kept making it longer because she thought we could do more. But that's not what made me quit. I handed in my 2-week notice when we were told that we'd no longer have a cook. You know, the one who would bread and cook the chicken wedges and wings and fry the corn dogs. Instead, they were bringing in pre-breaded garbage that the cashiers would have to throw the cook on top of all the normal stuff, which we struggled to do already. A good chunk of us quit because of that. Found out about 2 months later that the idea only lasted a month because chicken sales were only 1/3 of what they normally were. A few months after this, another good chunk left because the woman who had been working there for around 20 years left. Edit. Oh damn. Was not expecting to get this many upvotes. Thanks to all of you. My boss used to gather everyone every morning and think he was laying down the law by gurning about whatever came to his head first thing in the morning, and he always finished up his whinge with, "And if you don't like it, you know where the gate is." We all got together and agreed next day when he said it we would all immediately turn and head for the gate. We were in the middle of a multi-million-pound contract and we then demanded we get better working conditions, better overtime rate, and allowed days off if we needed it, otherwise we all walk. 3 of us, the engineers, quit the same week and without any discussion between ourselves. Man in charge was an insufferable, insulting twat. This led to the head office losing faith and the whole subsidiary being sold off. I worked at the largest apartment complex in my area, 800 units. With maintenance, the office crew had about 10 people and maintenance had 9. Had a great group with an amazing property manager and maintenance supervisor. The property manager took an offer managing a beautiful resort property. In comes the new property manager who had next to no experience. And she starts to try to change things even though it ran fine like it was. She also became a mouthpiece for corporate. Everything they suggested she put straight back out to us. Within a month 7 of 9 maintenance employees put in their 2 weeks notice, including the maintenance supervisor. The next month 5 office workers had their 2 weeks in. A few months later I heard that the new property manager shut down the entire office and maintenance department to take them all to some golf tournament and got herself fired for it.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.